Hi, this is Ann Alexander. I am now with Coldwell Banker Seacoast Advantage. My office is located in the Murrells Inlet area, and all of my contact information is still the same. So let's head in today to talk about our first-time home buyers. This is a series that I've been doing since January, and we're going to continue. So let's see what we have to talk about today. Hi, this is Ann Alexander with Coldwell Banker Seacoast Advantage in Murrells Inlet. Today on our first time home buyer vlog, I wanted to talk about the contract. So we've gone all the way through everything, and now we're getting down and writing the offer. And this is the paper that it goes on. I'm going to be using the South Carolina buy and sell real estate residential contract today. And if you live in a different state, each state has its own contract available for that. And they're pretty similar, so I think it will probably hit the major points that all of the contracts will have. All right, so what I like to do is the first line here, number 1 says parties. And I always use what my clients have on their driver's license. So in my case, it would be Anne Marie Alexander. And then the sellers, your agent is going to get that from the tax records because it has to be all, coordinated with all of that. So that's going to be on that first line. Our next line that's really important is the closing attorney. If you haven't selected one yet, that's fine, but your agent should be giving you at least 2 to 3 different names of attorneys that your paperwork would go to. Here in South Carolina, we have to have an attorney present, and the attorney's office handles all of the title search and all of the ins and outs of purchasing the property. Other states do not use attorneys. Some of them have title companies. But here, and like I said, in South Carolina, we're going to go over what we have here, but we use attorneys. So that information would go into that line. You also have to disclose if the buyer or the seller is actually a licensed realtor. So those boxes would be checked as well. And then when you do go show property, or when you've been out looking at property, your agent should have disclosed what type of relationship that they have with you. And on our contract, we do have to disclose that we have told you what kind of relationship we have, and that would be gone over at the very beginning. Purchase price is the purchase price that you are offering them. So let's say the property is they're asking $250,000, and you're going to offer $248,500. That's what would be written in there. Payable by transfer of good funds, and you would tell them if you're going to be financing. There's a button or square here for combination or cash. And being that we're doing a first time home buyers program, this would be finance. Closing verification. If you were doing a cash purchase, then we would have to show them that you do have the cash available to do a cash purchase. Then the next line here says this contract is or is not contingent upon the sale or closing of buyer's real property. And since you are a first-time home buyer, it would not be contingent upon that. All right, the next section is property, and this is where all of the legal information goes on these lines for the property. So the address, the city, the county, and each property has a tax number, and so that would go in here as well. if it is in a subdivision, you would have the lot number, the block number, maybe even the section, and then the subdivision name would be in there as well. Everybody initials. Right now it would be the buyer initialing, and if the offer is accepted, then the seller would initial there. All right, our next line is the conveyance or closing possession. So this is telling them that you would be closing on or before X date. Right now, I think I talked about a little bit last week, the closings are taking about 45 days. And I just spoke with our attorney here a little bit ago, and some of them are even going almost up to 60 days. But that is because of so many properties in our area at this time of recording, that we have so many properties being purchased, that the appraisers and even the title search is taking a little bit longer for the lenders and things. So there's a lot of variables going on, but typically it's about 45 days. And then this next line here, it says in the names, and that is how you would want the title to reach on your deed. So that would be however you wish to have that put on your deed is what names need to go here. So in my case, it would be Anne Marie Alexander, and if I had somebody else's name on there, it would be those names as well. And the earnest money, we've talked about that a little bit. That is the money that accompanies the offer. And we talked about it last week, that the more you put into that earnest money, the more solid that offer is going to be. So you're going to write that on this line right here. I would write that for you, but you would be telling me how much you want to do that. And what I normally do is that I will have that check in hand, but I will not submit it until I know I have a ratified contract. That means all parties have agreed upon the terms of this offer. So what I usually do is, let's say it's $1,000, and I will be telling them that it would be paid by 6 p.m. and I usually give it 5 days. Or, it would be in the form of a check, cash, or a wire. Typically, we ask for a check. That way, everything, even for your lender, they can see where all of this money is going. I don't recommend cash at all because they're going to want to know where you got that from. So normally and typically, a check is preferable. And then the money would be going into an escrow account. And so that check would be payable to Coldwell Banker Seacoast Advantage escrow account. And that's where it will be held until, and it would be, deposited, but it would be held in that account until closing. And I usually then request it around 4 or 5 days before closing. So again, earnest money is the kind of the binding, on the contract, saying, yes, I am interested in it, and this is how much I am going to put towards that offer. All right, all of this bold business is in case something comes up and, we need to go to mediation. Let's say the contract falls through, we need to go to mediation. I put $90 in this section because that's how much it costs to, file the mediation. Transaction costs. This is for the homeowners association, and this is if no box is checked, these costs will be added to seller's transactions. So it's typically the seller that pays for the homeowners association and the transfer fees for that. And then on this next line at closing, seller pays buyer's transactions cost not to exceed a certain amount of dollars. That is when I asked for help with the closing costs. So let's say we know that we're going to need an extra $2,000 or $3,000 to go towards your closing costs. That's where I would put that in the contract for you, that the sellers would be assisting you with those closing costs. Again, every page is going to have initials. And line 7 is our important line about financing. And then this would be is or is not contingent upon obtaining financing, which we would be putting is going to be contingent upon. And typically it's a 30-year. And then the amount of the maximum of the purchase price or appraised value, whichever is lower, I usually put like 99.5. That way I know I'm covered. If I put anything less than that, even like 80%, you're going to be required to bring 20% of the purchase price to the table. So I always put 99%. That way there is no, I'm not locking you into having to bring, 20% to the table. And then in that same paragraph, you have to apply for financing by a certain date, and we would put that in there. Typically, obviously, we've already had a pre-approval, so we just need to take it to the next step. And I usually give that about 5 days again. And then that you would have all of that taken care of, usually by the 5 or 7 days is when I would have that in there. And then I must notify the seller, and I usually do that within 14 days, 14 calendar days, and letting them know that yes, we have applied for financing and we are in the process of having that being taken care of. Here you can put your lender name in there, and you're always allowed to change that. So, maybe we start with ABC Mortgage Company and we decide, 123 Mortgage Company has a better deal. So we can always change that. And this is where we also disclose what type of financing you're getting, if it's an FHA, a VA, or a conventional loan. So we would be putting that in there. If it is an FHA or a VA, we do need to have a special paper showing them that that is what we are going to be doing. And we don't have to give that to them right away. We can give that to them, in that 14 days. All right, the next section is on repairs. After we have had an agreement with everybody, I always schedule an inspection, and we'll go over that next week. But this is where I put down that I'm going to have that inspection done by a certain date. And knowing how busy our inspectors are at this moment, I usually give that a good 2 weeks after the acceptance of the contract. So on this, I'd probably put it, today's the end of March, so I'd probably put it maybe like April 15th. So that way it gives me time to schedule that with the inspector, and we're not going to be cutting it down to the wire. And then after that, once we have the inspection, we have to let the seller know that we've had the inspection and these are the repairs that we're requesting. So we actually have to put a date in there as well. So if we're putting April 15th, I would be putting probably April 17th or 18th on there to let them know that we have, giving them notification of what the repairs requested are. Let's see. I don't use due diligence. It's just a lot better to just do the actual repair. Termination, if it's part of that due diligence, as is, I will never allow you not to have an inspection. On this section, the seller should already have everything turned on. So I would never check this box where it says seller grants buyer permission to connect utilities, because that's going to be money out of your pocket that you don't need to be spending because it's not your property. Again, initials. The appraised value, we would always want to have this contingent upon the appraised value, especially in a market like today's where the prices, sometimes you've got some price wars going on with the offer, and sometimes the prices get kind of jacked up, if you will, to more than what's asking and more than what the comparable market value is. And so if the appraiser comes in and says, okay, you've offered $248,000 for this property, but it's only worth $255,000, then this allows you to walk away because your lender is not going to lend you money at $285,000 when the property is only worth $255,000. They're only going to give you that $255,000. So this would definitely be contingent upon the property appraising. So that gives you a legal way to walk away from the contract and not be, pulled in and having to buy the property. The wood infestation report, that's extremely important here in South Carolina. This is basically a termite report. So that has to be done. It's usually 10 to 15 days before the closing date, and I always write will be contingent upon, and that would be the buyer having the property inspected at their expense. Scratch that. It would be contingent, and the seller would be paying for the inspection, but the buyer gets to choose who we use. So again, let me restate that. It would be contingent upon the seller paying for the wood infestation report, but the buyer gets to choose who the company is that is being used for that. And again, that the date must be done 10 to 15 days prior to closing. So if we have a closing date of April 30th, the soonest we can get that done would be April 15th. All right, the next section is survey, title, elevation, insurance. All of that is up to the buyer. But if you're concerned about where your lines are and things like that, then I would definitely have a survey done. Survival, all contracts are still binding even if one of the parties passes. So unfortunately, I think people would take that into consideration, but technically the contract is still binding even if one of the parties passes away. Home warranty company optional coverage. I always ask for a home warranty, especially on a resale property, because that is going to cover your major appliances in the house, the water heater, the washer, the dryer, if that conveys, your dishwasher, your refrigerator, anything, air conditioning, that kind of thing. So I always do ask for it. You may not get it from the seller, but this is something that I always ask for. On a typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath, that home warranty is running around $450, and I usually, like I said, ask the seller to pay that. But that covers you for 12 months. So when you walk into the place and the next day, you've got keys in hand and you open the door, and 2 days later the refrigerator gives out, this will cover that. All right, everything else is pretty much standard here. Fire and casualty or injury. There's parties you will have if something does happen that's catastrophic like that, you have 5 calendar days after the notice of damage to terminate the contract if something happens. Again, initials. All right, the next section is super important as well. It is the residential property condition disclosure statement. I think we've talked about this before. The seller is supposed to and must fill out a property disclosure form. That is a form that tells us as buyers if there's anything wrong with the property that they know of, and they are legally supposed to disclose any and everything that they know of that is wrong with the property. So in this form, this little checkbox is just telling us that we have received it, we have read through it, and that form also has everybody's initials on it as well. Lead-based paint, that doesn't really apply to anything that has been built after 1978. But if it was before 1978, there would be a lead paint disclosure that would have to be initialed. Kind of coming back down here. Let's see. And this talks about mediation, the broker's compensation. Again, when I'm working with my buyers, the compensation that I receive comes from the sale of the property, and that is paid by the seller. So as a buyer, you don't have to pay me anything. Notice and delivery, we are supposed to give them, notice of this as soon as possible. Expiration of offer. This is where after we've given them this offer, we give them a certain amount of time to respond to us. And in today's market, it's, let's say it's a Friday afternoon. I usually give them till Monday at 5 o'clock because, people are out of town, different things going on. But I usually give them a good, 48 hours at least to respond to our offer. Right now, people are responding pretty quickly, but then again, there's multiple offers being, going on in our market at this time of recording. So you probably have to give them about 48 hours. All right. This section here in witness, this doesn't really apply to anybody that I've worked with. It's regarding power of attorney. If you do have a power of attorney, we do, and you're buying it, for somebody else with a power of attorney, then I do need to have copies of that paperwork. So the next is super easy. Buyer sign and initial. Everything that I do, and most companies do nowadays, everything is through electronic signatures. So this would all be done online and over the signature. I do not put your address or phone numbers in this or emails in this because I don't want them contacting you directly. And, we just don't want to get mixed up in that kind of thing. The sellers, if they agree to all the terms and conditions, then they would be signing here. Again, lovely signatures. And this is my page where I fill out who I am, who I'm with, and what my license number is. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope you got a lot of good information out of this episode. Next week, we are going to talk about home inspections and why they are so important. And I'm going to give you a few pictures and show you kind of the behind the scenes and what you expect or what you should be getting from the inspection report. and how that comes to you and what to look for. So thanks again for joining me. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next week.